I developed depersonalization and derealization, which is very scary if you've experienced it. You literally feel like you're not in your body and the world around you isn't real or it's a dream. And I feel like that also plays into the fact that I was on a hormone that my body's not used to. I also, like I said in my original video, I had a seizure. I was laying in my bed just scrolling through TikTok, and I all of a sudden feel like I can't breathe, and like my whole body was paralyzed, and then I was just like shaking. And it lasted for maybe 30 seconds, but when it was finished, I kind of had a panic attack.
Welcome. Today I'm speaking with Kate Pond. She's a detransitioned woman and former trans kid, and she's been bravely sharing her story online. So I'm excited to speak with her today and discover more about her. So Kate, first of all, thank you for joining me, and I'm really excited that you're here. So to start, could you share a few things about yourself and your story?
Yeah, so I am neurodivergent, I'm autistic, and I have ADHD, and I never really felt like I fit in before puberty. And when puberty started, I just felt like I did not belong in my body. And so the first few people that I told were my friends and a teacher, and they all suggested that I look up what transgender and non-binary means. And so and that's the first thing you hear when you tell somebody your symptoms, you're going to believe it. And so at age 12 or 13, I started identifying as non-binary. And then from 14 to 22, I identified as a transgender man or transgender boy. I didn't say man. And I was on testosterone for about 6 to 8 months back in 2020 during a lockdown. And yeah, that's my story.
Wow. So, first of all, what just struck me about that is that, it's so common for kids to feel uncomfortable during puberty, especially young girls. And then when you add neurodivergence, you add these other factors on top of that. It's kind of like the perfect storm for these ideologies to come in. And
Yeah.
then you said that a teacher actually encouraged you to look this up.
Yeah, so my math teacher, who was the leader of the Gay Straight Alliance Club in high school, I was identifying as non-binary, going by they them, and when I came to her telling her about my feelings, she brought up female to male transgender, and she didn't actually tell me like you're this. It was I was like I'm this. So, but she was the first one who brought it up to me.
Wow. Wow, that's just crazy. I think
Yeah.
there's like a little bit of a age gap between us. I'm 33. And I think you're, how old are you?
25. 25.
Okay. From the time between when I was in school to when you were in school, it's just, back then teachers didn't know anything about this. At least not where I was from. I live in like a small town. I was brought up in a small town in California, and we did have like a GSA. We did have like some kids that, identified as LGBT, but it was just so unheard of for like a teacher to talk to a kid about being trans. And then fast forward to now, or rather when you were in school, it's just such a huge difference that happened so rapidly.
Yeah. There's probably maybe like 60 to 70% of the kids at my high school identified as LGBTQ. So
60%?
Yeah.
Wow, that's absolutely insane. There's definitely some studies. Oh, I'm sorry. There's a kitty butt.
I love kitties.
I do too.
Hello.
Do you have kitties?
No. My apartment doesn't allow pets, but I would definitely get a cat if they did.
Aw. Well,
Yeah.
This is Teddy, and I've got another one named Pepper that might make an appearance too. So there have been some studies that have shown a rapid increase, but 60%, that is pretty shocking. But when you take into account the social contagion and, these groups of friends that all kind of bounce ideas off of each other and
Yeah.
get caught in this rabbit hole of different identities, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'd like to back up a little bit and just ask you, like, what your childhood was like and what you felt drew you to gender ideology in the first place, or what made you start to feel like I might not be a girl.
Yeah, so my childhood was pretty turbulent. The I mean the home life was pretty chaotic, and so I never really felt like I could truly like be open and talk to any of my family members, and so I found friends on the internet in the wrong places, and I feel like that's what's first opened me to like trans ideology is just uh people that I met on like Tumblr and Instagram and those types of websites.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
I was big onto like online sites as well when I was like a preteen, especially, but I think I was before Tumblr, so I never got
yeah,
into that one. But I hear that I hear that from so many detransitioners that like Tumblr in particular was a big factor.
yeah. It was I spent maybe most of my day on Tumblr, so it was definitely a really big place for people to share their feelings and uh, like share information about LGBTQ stuff. So
Right. Sorry, he really wants attention right now. But so I think you already said it, but what age did you begin identifying as non-binary, and what age did you start transitioning?
I first identified as non-binary gender fluid at 13, I believe.
Okay.
Um, and then I identified as a trans boy at, I think, 15 or 16. And then I started medically transitioning at age 20.
So when you started identifying as non-binary, that kind of did that coincide with like the start of puberty for
Yeah,
you?
yeah, that was pretty much like a year into puberty. I had just had enough of the way my body was developing. I just was uncomfortable and overstimulated in like the body that I had. And so once I found that there was like a label for it, then I was like, oh, that's who I am.
Yeah, I it makes you wonder, like, if this ideology just wasn't available at all, um, like if we had never learned about it, like would we have just kind of gotten over that discomfort going forward?
Yeah,
Because I
yeah,
because in the past, like the studies on desistance show that the majority of these kids, uh, they recovered from their gender dysphoria by
yeah,
the end of puberty. So essentially, going through puberty is what cured the gender dysphoria for the
yeah,
vast majority of them. And so I
yeah,
feel like because we felt like we had a way out, I mean, it's very destructive, right? Like
yeah,
it stops you from actually facing the feelings, and it gives you kind of this trap door that you can go down into. So I don't know if
yeah.
that resonates with you, but
Oh, it does.
it's just
Yeah,
something that came to mind.
yeah.
Okay, so my next question is what medical interventions did you have, and um, how did each impact you? So for you, it was testosterone, right? You weren't on puberty blockers.
No, I never went on blockers. I just took testosterone. And sorry, what was the question again?
Oh, and so how did the testosterone impact you, like mentally and physically?
When I was on the testosterone, of course, I had the effects of what happens when you go on testosterone, the deepening of the voice, more body hair, like masculinizing like body and facial features. But emotionally and mentally, I was like my anger went from like here to like here. Like I felt so much rage and I did not know how to let it out. And I also became more depressed while I was on it. Um, in the moment, I felt like I subconsciously was telling myself like this is going to make myself be like the more authentic me, but I had gotten more depressed and I did not know how to control my anger, and so um, that's how I felt when I was on it.
Do you feel like the depression was literally like a side effect of the testosterone that made you feel more depressed, or do you feel like, because for me it was like, I started testosterone and I saw my body start to change, like my shoulders, where I was getting more muscular in my shoulders and my body was changing shape, but then to me it would just, my chest would look really weird on my body, or like my hips would look really weird, and so it's like I got kind of disheartened because it's like the more I did to my body, the more I was like, wow, I got to do so much more. Like, now that I've
Yeah,
got like the
yeah,
muscular shoulders, like I need to get rid of my chest. And just,
yeah,
do you think that was
yeah.
part of the depression for you?
I mean, I've had depression since I was probably a kid, but yeah, when I was on testosterone, I was definitely like very self-conscious about my hips are too girly, my boobs are still here, my voice isn't deep enough, I don't have facial hair. So that was dragging me deeper into a depression.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And just, I mean, the whole idea of like, I need to do these hormones and get these surgeries in order to be happy. Like, I'm not okay
Yeah,
without that. My gender dysphoria will never be away. I will never go away. I will never be okay unless I change my
yeah,
body. I think that idea is like inherently depressing. And,
yeah.
I don't find it, when I think about it, in retrospect, like it's not liberating or freeing or validating.
It's trapping.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've mentioned on your TikTok that you started having some health issues while you were on the testosterone. So can you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, yeah. So, I did, like I said earlier, I had increased depression. I also had increased anxiety. And I mean, it was during COVID, and so I think that could play a factor in the amount of anxiety I developed while I was on testosterone. But I
Definitely.
developed depersonalization and derealization, which is very scary if you've experienced it. You literally feel like you're not in your body and the world around you isn't real or it's a dream. And I feel like that also plays into the fact that I was on a hormone that my body's not used to. I also, um, like I said in my original video, I had a seizure. And I didn't realize that I had a seizure until a few days later, and I looked up what the heck happened to me because the story of that is I was laying in my bed just scrolling through TikTok, and I all of a sudden feel like I can't breathe, and like my whole body was paralyzed, and then I was just like shaking. And
Mm.
it lasted for maybe 30 seconds, but when it was finished, I kind of had a panic attack and took some melatonin and went to bed. I didn't want to deal with it. And so I later realized that that probably was a seizure. And, thankfully that was the only seizure that I ever had, knock on wood. But yeah, I also just had such bad like anxiety and anger while I was on it. So yeah.
Yeah. A couple of things. First of all, the depersonalization. I don't know if I experienced it exactly the same way that you had, but I do feel like just your body and your voice and everything changing so rapidly. Like even if you think it's what you want, it's not something that happens naturally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it would happen at puberty to some degree, but it's much more spread out over time, and things are changing so gradually that
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
you're like I swear, like I was practically noticing things day to day, or that my voice was different
Yeah.
day to
Yeah.
day.
I'd get excited. I worked at a coffee shop during lockdown and I got excited when my voice would crack while I was saying, "Hi, welcome to the coffee shop." I'd get excited, but then I'd go home and be like, "Oh my gosh, that's what I sound
Yeah.
like." So,
And then the reality kind of hits you that like this is permanent.
yeah,
like
yeah,
okay, something physiological is happening to my voice, and whether I like it, whether I don't, like there's no going back. And
yeah, yeah,
that I was having some health issues too, but like that was
yeah,
the main reason that I stopped, is because I was like, oh my gosh, like this is, I can't sing anymore. Like
yeah, yeah. I was a part of the church choir and I really wanted to be a pop singer. And, it was devastating, like trying to hit the notes and being like, I can't sing anymore. So I definitely relate to that. So,
yeah. And for you, I'm just really curious because I've spoken to quite a few women who were on testosterone, and about the voice effects like they've experienced. And um, do you find that your voice still functions like it used to, like but in like a deeper range, or do you feel like there's been like some damage, and it's harder to like navigate going from the bottom to top of your voice?
there's definitely some damage. Like I even just talking like yesterday at work, we were fooling around and doing impersonations of different people while we were all waiting to like clock out because we were like counting the till or whatever. And I couldn't like talk in a high voice because I was trying to do Minnie Mouse. And it just nothing could come out. It was like I was trying to say it in a
Mm.
high voice and nothing came out. And it was embarrassing.
Yeah. I've like I had that same problem like when I first stopped testosterone, and there's been some progress, but my high voice is still very unstable, especially some days. And like it has improved over time, but it's it's just like I used to be able to somewhat predict how my voice would be day to
Yeah.
day. If I wasn't in like great voice, I could go into my like falsetto, for instance, and I know I would be able to. And like now,
Yeah.
when I go up there, some days I have good days, but other days it's
Yeah.
so unstable, and so it's hard for me to even like book gigs or do any live performing, because
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen once I try to go above like a certain
Yeah.
register voice. So I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to be soprano in the children's choir and now I'm pretty much tone deaf. Like I feel like I could improve if I really like focus and was trying to, but I'm just tone deaf at this point when I sing. So,
So what was your life like while you were transitioning? Like not so much the physical changes or emotional changes, but just like what was happening in your life?
I was working at a coffee shop during lockdown, didn't really have a life outside of work. All of my friends were basically um, LGBT. I didn't feel like I could safely come out at home. And so I was basically just online all the time. I was at work, then I went home, said hello, and then was just back on my phone until it was time to go to bed. So I was very antisocial, didn't have anybody to talk to, and I don't think e- any of us had during that time. But I do remember an instance that kind of, I guess that kind of jump started the questioning if I really was trans was my coffee shop was giving out pronoun pins for us to wear, and I took the he him to put on my uniform, and I dropped it in my dad's car. And when he picked me up, because I can't drive at the moment, but when he picked me up after work, he asked me, "Hey, what's this new pin about?" And he shows it to me, and I'm just like, "Oh, I just grabbed the wrong one. I meant to grab
Mm.
the she her." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And he gave it to me, and I told him that I exchanged it for the she her. And so I feel like that was the first time I questioned if I really felt affirmed by going by he, him. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
And how long was it between that and um, I want to hear about your experience with Planned Parenthood as well. But what was it? How much time was it between that you grabbing the he him pronoun pin and then when you decided to medically transition?
I was probably 2 months into being on testosterone when that happened. And so, like, I had,
Oh, you had already started testosterone.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, but that was the first thing that happened that made me think about like going off of the testosterone. So,
Oh, it made you think about going off.
yeah, well, so 2 months in, I had already began to question because I had so many problems with how it was administered to me, which was the testosterone patch that I wore on my leg. I was having allergic reactions to that. I had already thought about going off just because of the allergic reactions. And then after the pronoun pin incident, I called them up and asked to either go on injectables or go on the testosterone gel. And
Mm,
they gave me the gel, and it was easier for me to be on that because I wasn't having those allergic reactions. But I was still, every single day that I put the gel on my arms, I was still like, is this the day that my voice is going to drop and I can't go back? So it was
mhm.
just self gaslighting myself into liking being on it.
Right. I mean, you've been told like that this is going to fix me. This is going to fix this dysphoria that I'm feeling. And
Yeah.
then, I believe that gender dysphoria is just like a hodgepodge of other issues that
Yeah.
have maybe
Yeah.
not been explored fully. And so, it's really easy for people to, what's the right word here? I guess, like rewrite their life and be like,
Yeah.
yeah, I've had this issue and that issue, but it was all because of gender dysphoria. And then there's, this supposed cure for that. Okay. And had you
Yeah.
come out to anybody back then? Like it sounds like your dad was pretty in the dark, but
Yeah. And I feel so bad about it now because my entire family was in the dark, but all my friends knew, all of my coworkers knew. At work, I was using the pronouns and the name that I wanted to use, but at home, I was just Kate. So,
what was your hesitancy in like coming out to your parents?
um, just the unsafe environment and unsafe relationship that I did have with my the parent that I was living with at home. So yeah,
Mm, oh, I'm
yeah,
sorry to hear that. Do you feel like connecting with your friends, connecting with people online, do you feel like that was kind of an escape from the
it was,
reality at
yes.
home?
Yeah, yeah, it felt like an escape from just the situation that I was in. And like thankfully I have moved very far away and um but at the time it was like an escape. Like I didn't have to be the person that my parent wanted me to be. I could be myself.
Mm,
So yeah.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's a big part of young adulthood as well. Is finding your identity outside of your family of origin.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next question, what uh, what caused you to detransition?
Actually you. Well, not you entirely.
Aw.
But when I was questioning these things like why has my like mental health not improved while being on testosterone? Why do I still feel uncomfortable even though my body and my voice is looking and sounding how I want it to look? Why am I still feeling really depressed and down? And um the first thing that popped up was like detransitioning, and I think it was like a Reddit thread or something. And then I don't know if I put that phrase into Instagram or TikTok, but you were like one of the first people that popped up when it came to detransitioners. And I was like, oh my gosh, if this person can, go from identifying one way to another, then I think like I might try it out. And so from that, I really, at first I detransition. I didn't come out to anybody except for myself about the detransition because I was afraid and my fears were affirmed when I did tell my friends that I no longer identify as a trans guy. I am just a woman again. And I lost a lot of friends because of that. Not because they were angry but because like, oh, you were never really trans. And so, yeah, I started detransitioning in secret for about maybe a year. And then I like changed all my, like my Instagram page to my like name Kate, and I changed my pronouns on the Instagram pages. And then I slowly started telling my friends, and a lot of them to this day still call me by the name that I was going by when I was trans. But they do like accept my she her. So, yeah.
Had you gotten your name legally changed?
I had not. No, I had started that process. I called up like the I don't know if it's City Hall or I'd called up the place that deals with the legal name change, and I had told them my interest, and they said that I could come in and get the paperwork, but I never went in and got the paperwork, so I still had my birth name legally.
Yeah, yeah, I had started the process as well. I did turn my paperwork in, and then while it was being processed, I decided to cancel it. So I turned in like
Yeah,
another paper just to cancel it, and like thank goodness
yeah,
that I did that, honestly, because that would have just been another
yeah,
a hassle to go through. But anyway, I'm so honored that you found my content, and
yeah, yeah,
it's funny, like I got banned so much. I think I've been banned from TikTok like maybe 5 times. And obviously like that's probably been the site that I've gotten the most hate on.
yeah,
When I just hear from people that they found it helpful, like it makes me feel better about my
yeah,
content,
yeah,
and like
yeah,
glad that I put it out there, because there's definitely times that I've felt like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done this, maybe I never should have made anything
yeah,
public, but I
yeah,
think it is definitely worth it to help other
yeah,
people.
yeah.
I really feel that way.
I had a TikTok and I'd gotten a lot of followers, and I believe I never even like asked to get it restored because I didn't identify with any of the stuff that I was making videos about. But I did get banned as well back in like 21. So,
Mm.
yeah.
What were you banned for?
I think I was banned for hate speech because I was talking about detransitioning, and my entire like TikTok was about like leftist politics and being transgender. That was my TikTok. So,
Yeah, probably a bunch of people just mass reported you. And I
yeah,
feel like when that happens, if enough people report somebody, they'll just remove it, and they don't really look at it unless you request the review. And so most of mine got restored, but I feel like it's been getting a little better because I've been posting some pretty, I guess controversial content,
yeah,
for transition justice
yeah,
on there. And we haven't gotten any videos like removed or anything in a long time, knock on
yeah,
wood. But
yeah,
it seems to be getting better. Like I feel like we're being restricted less, and our reach is like getting better. So
yeah.
that's good.
I'm surprised I don't have as many hate comments on my new TikTok than I did on my old TikTok when I first started talking about detrans stuff. So,
Yeah, I think it really it depends on like the audience you're reaching. Have you gotten called transphobic or anything, or bigoted
oh
or
yeah,
anything like that?
yeah. I've been called transphobic. I don't really. This sounds mean. I don't really care anymore if they call me transphobic because I know that I'm not transphobic. I'm just speaking my truth about my experience. And so if me speaking about my personal experience is transphobic, okay. Like I'm not attacking like trans people. I'm not calling them names. I'm just talking about my experience. And so, yeah. Um I've also been called like because I do post religious stuff as well. I've been called like a transphobic Christian white nationalist or whatever. And so like that it's just I've learned not to focus on the negative and focus on the positive and focus on just spreading awareness for one side of the story. So,
Yeah, yeah, and it seems like whenever I mean, in my experience, when I would post something about my own story, people would always be like, "Well, that's just you." You
yeah,
know, like you have to put a caveat on that, like, make sure that people know it's not everyone.
yeah,
But it's like I feel like there's trans influencers out there that are literally telling people like, well, if you think this or you do this, you might be trans, and like,
yeah,
they literally are telling other people what their experience is, or they're telling
yeah,
me I was never really trans, or so it's just kind of like
yeah,
a double standard. But yeah, you mentioned Christianity.
yeah,
Were you brought up as a Christian, or did you have sort of a spiritual awakening like
yeah.
post transition?
I did grow up Christian. I was baptized in the Presbyterian church, and I went to church every Sunday, and I like believed up until maybe age 11 or 12. And then I got into, well, first I was like atheist, like there is no God. Like this is all fake and this is all baloney and everybody who goes to church are just idiots. And then I got into like new age spiritualism, crystals, chakras, tarot cards, light language, like that type of stuff. And I was really into that. And I was also really into like worshiping and giving offerings to Greek gods. And then I kind of went back to like questioning. And this is like maybe in 2021 when I like fully detransitioned, like socially and like personally. I started like questioning like what is out there. And so I just bought like the Torah, the Quran, and the Bible. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to read these. And if I click with one, and if I truly have an experience with one, then I will put my focus on that. And so I read all three books and I like really connected with the Bible and not to get too like spiritual, but I really like felt the presence of Jesus guiding me. Um, Ever since I did start reading the Bible and believing in that. So yeah.
And sorry, when was this? Was this like after you had detransitioned, or was this while you were
Yeah.
still taking testosterone?
This was after I detransitioned. The first thing that I picked up was the Quran because I think that was the beginning of like the Israel Palestine thing.
Mm.
And so I was just like, I want to see this from both sides. And so I read the Quran and I read the Torah. And then I was like, okay, I guess I'll pick up the Bible, see if I still like vibe with it. So yeah, this was after I detransitioned. This was probably 2021, early 2022. So yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Spirituality has been a big part of my detransition as well that I
Yeah.
won't really talk about like as much. I've been like more focused on just sort of debunking some of the like false scientific claims that are out there and everything. But
Yeah. Yeah.
to me, like, in my experience, it always did feel sort of inherently wrong to be like changing my perfectly healthy body. And like
Yeah.
one of the reasons I detransitioned is I I was doing a meditation and I just kind of heard this voice. It wasn't in like literal, it wasn't a literal voice like in
Yeah. Yeah.
uh you know, like in English or whatever, but it was just like a feeling like you are harming your body. And it was a very
Yeah.
like nurturing, warm
Yeah.
feeling, not like a judgmental, but just like a, like I care about you and you're harming yourself
Yeah.
type of feeling. And yeah, that was definitely like very instrumental in me
Yeah.
detransitioning. So anyway, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of
And
course.
yeah, and I just think it's so important to have a wide variety of experiences that people can, you know, like you somewhat related to mine, and I'm sure people are going to listen to you and be like, wow, I really resonate with that. And
Yeah. Yeah.
what are your current beliefs about gender? And I think you already partially answered this, but
Yeah.
um or you know, I mean, gender is such a
Yeah.
confusing term, but
Yeah.
like the ideology, I guess the tenets of gender ideology, like, you know, trans women are women, and everybody has a gender identity, um, things like that. Like
Yeah.
what are your current beliefs now, and how have they shifted?
So my current beliefs are completely different than the beliefs I had when I was a teenager and when I was medically transitioning. I mean, I'm open for more like explanation from like research or people who with actual live experience, but I now just think that there's only two genders. You're either born male or you're born female. And let's put it this way, there's only two genders and there's over 8 billion different expressions of those two genders. That's what I believe.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. Um, because yeah, like you can't just, every woman is different and every man is different. So
Yeah.
if you say, you know, you walk like a girl or something, it's like, what does a girl walk like?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
there's obviously some things that are more common in like each sex or each gender, but it's like there's always going to be exceptions. Like we're all
Yeah.
individuals.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I'm not gonna go tell a trans woman or a trans man that you're living the wrong way and that anything like that. I'm gonna respect them and like respect the way that they want to live, but I'm I don't have to accept it to respect it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an important distinction. You talked about your experience with Tumblr. Do you
Yes.
feel like social media and or peer pressure, like in schools, do you think that is causing an increase in people transitioning?
Oh, definitely. Even like I went to high school before TikTok, before like just the amount of people on TikTok. Like TikTok didn't even exist when I was in high school. But a lot of the content that I was seeing on Tumblr and on like fan fiction websites and YouTube, it was all just if you feel this way, you might be this. Or like even on like because I'm a huge nerd. I'm really into like I was really into fan fiction when it came to like the fandoms that I was into and still are into. And there were like people would write like stories about like imagine this character reacting to you telling them that you're this. And so it was a lot of like mushy feel good stuff and it's really like influenced the way that I identified, and I feel like a lot of my friends were also into that stuff, and they also identified as like TQ plus. And so I really feel like social media is good, but it also is very harming in a way, especially if young people have access to it unfiltered. And so, yeah,
Completely agree. Like as a musician and content creator, I really enjoy making videos. I enjoy like sharing my music. I
yeah,
enjoy, you know, connecting with people through social media. But yeah, when it comes to kids and, you know, vulnerable people, they're, you know, and it's so hard for parents to filter it now.
yeah, yeah,
like I don't know if you've heard of Erin Friday, but she is a mom and lawyer and activist, and she was talking about how she put parental blocks on her daughter's devices, but then her daughter was so smart that she just figured out how to get around it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's so difficult. And but yeah, I absolutely agree that young impressionable minds, social media is no place for kids.
Yeah.
um So I forgot to ask you a question earlier, that I want to go back to really quick. So I wanted to sort of hear you. I know you've talked about it on your TikTok already, but
Yeah.
I'd like to hear like your experience about your experience with Planned Parenthood, and also like what you think about Planned Parenthood and how they've gone from, mostly focusing on reproductive health and abortions to, switching over and uh, I was going to use the word capitalizing, but that's
Yeah.
maybe too strong of a word.
Yeah.
But how now they're specializing in, I think they're the largest provider of cross-sex hormones for young adults now.
Yeah. So my experience with Planned Parenthood, getting an appointment was super easy. I called them I called them and I told them that I'm trans and I want to see if I can go on hormone replacement therapy. And they said, okay, these are the dates we have available with that specialist. And I told them, okay. And because it was lockdown, it was like a video call like you and I are doing. And it was maybe 10, 15, 30 minutes. And it was quick, like, okay, why do you want this? Tell us about you. Any health problems? Okay, we'll send it over to your pharmacy. And so it was very easy to access those hormones. And throughout me being on the hormones, they never reached out to me once. And um, I had to reach out to them and give them an update first about the patch that I went off, and then I went on to the testosterone gel. But I had to update them about the patch and get an appointment, which was a video appointment. And then after being on the gel, I had to reach out and ask them if I can get some labs to see how I'm doing. So I never got any calls like, hey, how is it going?
I
And
didn't
so,
either.
yeah. So, okay, that just affirmed, like, I thought that maybe it was just because of lockdown, but
No, I mean they've never checked in with how I'm doing, and they gave me a
yeah,
letter for top surgery as well. Did they approve you for anything like that?
I never asked for anything like that. But I did call them in 2022 to let them know that I was off of the testosterone and that I have not been taking it for a while. And the receptionist who transferred me to the person who prescribed me it straight up told me, like, you've been on this ever since this date and you're still on it, right? And I'm just like, no. And they're like, no, but you're on it, right? And I'm just like, no. And
Yeah, and
so,
didn't you say that they like you told them you were having these side effects and you wanted to stop, and like they basically told you not to stop, or encouraged you not to stop?
yeah, yeah. It wasn't like a straight up, you can't stop it. It was just like, those are normal reactions when you first go on it. And we would encourage you to stay on it longer to see if you still feel this way.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I'm so sorry that you weren't given like proper care by them. It just sucks that this is happening to so many people. But
Yeah.
I definitely had a similar experience. It was during COVID as well. And for me, I just called them and they said, okay, we'll have a doctor call you back. And I don't even know if they set up like an actual time. They just said they would have a doctor like call me back. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the doctor that called me back was trans themselves. And, they asked me a few questions, like if I had certain medical conditions. I can't even remember if they asked me about like any mental illness or anything like that.
Oh no, mental illness was not brought up. I told them that I was on a depression medication, but they never brought up mental illness.
Oh wow.
So, yeah.
I feel like maybe they did ask me just if I had any like mental health conditions, and but at the time my thought process was like, well, yeah, I have, of course, it's because I'm
Yeah.
gender dysphoric, and
Yeah.
so I think I said something like that, and they just accepted it at face value.
Yeah.
And like mine wasn't
Yeah.
even a telehealth appointment, it was just over the phone, so they didn't even see me or
Oh
what I looked like or anything. And
my gosh.
so I mean, I literally could have been anyone.
Yeah. And I think
And
that's so
then
scary. I think it's so scary because, like,
yeah,
hypothetically, you could lie you could have like so many health problems and just lie to them just to get it. So
right.
it's scary.
People doing that too. Like there's been some
There
moms
are.
that just called to see if they could get it. And I think, I don't know if it's still up, but Isaac Uncooked has like a
Yeah.
video on YouTube where he
Yeah.
he, he pretends to be FTM, when he was male to female. And
Yeah.
it's just, yeah, it's crazy how easy you can get them. But so what do you think about, um, do you think Planned Parenthood should be held accountable for the way they're prescribing hormones?
Yes. I think that they're prescribing them too easily. They have no business prescribing them. Well, let's preface this by saying I do not support what Planned Parenthood does, period. But Planned Parenthood originally was a women's health clinic. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that they need to stay how they originally were. They have no business like going into the trans business. So that's just how I feel.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who's considering transitioning? And what would you say to somebody who has already transitioned and is considered detransitioning?
I would say to somebody who is considering transitioning that, you know, I I can't make decisions for you, but I really suggest that you do more research on what testosterone or estrogen actually does to your body and what the side effects can possibly be, and go from there. I'll tell you what to do or what to do, but you need to research, and not just research from one side of the ideological spectrum. Research it from every single side. Even if you don't like one side, still research it from that side. And to somebody who's considering detransitioning, you know, go for it. If that's what you feel is best for you, then go for it. It was what was best for me, and I think that it's just an amazing thing to actually come to term with who you actually are, whether that be detransitioning or staying in that transition. But go for it. So
Yeah. Um, what you said about the research from both sides, I think that's, for someone who's considering transition, I think that's so important. I have a science degree in molecular biology, and normally, like, I consider myself a very critical thinker that does look at multiple sides
yeah,
of issues. But I think with the trans issue, like, what is so difficult is that you are literally told like not to listen to anything
yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's critical of medical transition or social transition or whatever. And
yeah,
so like when I was transitioning, that's when Abigail Schreier's book came out, Irreversible Damage. That's what it's called. And
yeah,
I ended up reading the book later, but it talks about how these online influencers are teaching young people how to be trans, and saying
Yeah.
things like, if you think you're trans, you probably are. And another
Yeah.
thing that they're saying is, so one of the influencers that she had written about, made a video to say, don't read this book, like it's just transphobic.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that I feel like there's like a moral value assigned to it. Like, if you're even listening to somebody who, not even, isn't even necessarily critical of it, just has questions, it's
Yeah.
like considered transphobic. And so I think,
Immediately.
yeah, and so I think I was so convinced that what I believed was like morally right, and that,
Yeah.
and that medical transition was helping so many people and stuff like that, that I just thought it was harmful for me to even listen to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And I completely 100% agree with that. I feel like I was in like a fishbowl echo chamber, and I did not want to leave it, because if I left it, I would have to do my own research, and I would have to be uncomfortable researching a different side of the spectrum. So,
Yeah, yeah, and it's difficult to find the information as well.
yeah.
Like, I spent a lot of time, just because when you type into Google, when you try to find studies on medical transition, it's it's actually really hard. Like, I feel like there's a few articles and studies that will pop up, but it's like you really have to dig to find stuff. Like,
Yeah.
generally, the way that I would even find some studies is like by finding somebody else, like a doctor that had already written uh, like a research paper about it, and then they had links to these studies.
Yeah.
Because if you just use search engines, like a lot of them are
Yeah.
suppressed.
Yeah.
So it's actually, yeah, it's really difficult to find the information. And when you're talking about children and young people transitioning, like, I mean, people are always like, it's your fault, you should have done your research, even if the person's like a child, and
Yeah.
or they were so, had so many mental health issues and stuff that it just wasn't possible for them
Yeah.
to comprehend or give informed consent.
Yeah.
So but I agree with you. Like, I think that, people should do as much research as they can.
Yeah.
And also, I hope that doctors move towards being more forthcoming about, the lack of evidence, and the potential side effects and harm that it can cause. Because, we do already know these things somewhat from, like, women with like PCOS, or men that
Yeah.
have high estrogen conditions, and the problems that causes in the human body. So we do have some comparable situations that should be, logically applied to this, but unfortunately, most doctors are not taking that logical step. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's really doctors' responsibility to be more informed
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that I'm almost done with the questions that I had for you today, but I'd like to open it up and just ask if there's anything else you haven't shared that you would like to share.
Uh, no, not really. I just wanted to say thank you for, first of all, like being the first person that I saw talk about detransitioning online, and also thank you for giving me this platform to talk about my story. So, and just thank you for everything that you and everybody else who are fighting for this do. So, yeah, just thank you.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Kate, for, being willing to do this. It's been a
Yeah,
pleasure talking with you, and
me too.
thank you for your bravery. And
Yeah,
you know, I think it's great that you're putting your story out there to
yeah,
help other people be informed.
yeah,
And if you ever want to come back, just let me know. We can have another conversation sometime,
yeah,
and we might be speaking on a panel together,
yeah,
possibly.
yeah.
So I'll definitely, if that happens, I'll definitely post some links for that so people can get tickets. And yeah, thank you again for joining me.
Of course.